right, well, welcome to another version of the virtual Youth Innovation Lab. We're glad that everybody could join us today, and we'll be recording this and posting it on social media here later today. So as we usually do getting started, I just wanted to kind of give it an overview of what we're doing here, what the goal of Youth Innovation Lab is. And for that, I will go to my presentation here and go to our slideshow. So we're REM5 Virtual Reality Laboratory. So we've got a space in St. Louis Park, and our goal is really to bring immersive technology to people. It's one of those things. It's really cool technology, but it's not very easy to use sometimes. It can be really expensive. So we try to break down some of those barriers and get people into VR and trying new technology. This has really been the next big thing for a long time. It's getting close to 200 years. The stereoscope is the first image you see there on the left. It's really just two identical pictures, and one of the images there's a lens that kind of tilts that image a little bit so that you see a little bit of depth in the image. The ViewMaster, which you may be seeing, is a similar concept. And that is the first VR device that kind of went mainstream, but it was just single images, and you can click through, 6 or 8 images on each one of those discs, but didn't really disrupt education, entertainment, travel as much as maybe we thought it would back in the 30s. So where the current level of disruption really started was in 2012 when Oculus did a Kickstarter. They were eventually bought by Facebook, and now make the devices that we know today, like the Oculus Go and the Oculus Quest. So that's really where we are in VR today, and that's kind of the history of the technology. We really think about this in kind of 4 buckets. The immersive technology category, virtual reality is full virtual reality, where you're actually building a digital image around you. You can move around it. You can interact with the space. That's full VR, so it requires usually lighthouses, which is what we use at REM5, a powerful computer, or a headset that has all those things contained inside of them, so that it knows where you are in space. 360 video is a step down from that. So full virtual reality is what we call 6 degrees of freedom. So it knows where you're moving your head, left, right, up, down, and tilt. But it also knows where you're physically moving in an X, Y, and Z plane. So whether I'm moving my head to the left or right, forward or back, or up or down. 360 video knows how I'm moving my head, but doesn't know where I'm moving my head. So if I were to put a 360 video on and start walking, that might be a little bit disorienting. So that's really one of the big differences there. But really great for things like, watching a basketball game or watching a documentary film in 360 video. Mixed reality really mixes physical devices, so real devices, into the virtual world. So we have a hockey stick, we have a baseball bat that you can use. We're playing around with some ways to do golf in VR, and actually be holding a hockey stick or a golf club as you're doing a VR experience. And then augmented reality, which is something I'm going to show you a little bit today, is taking the real world and augmenting it, or putting a digital image on top of it. So that's some really interesting technology that you might have with you today, or in your pocket even. So we really think that this is going to be the next big learning platform. So it's going to change the way we work, learn, play, and socialize, and really just how we connect. And we're kind of seeing some of those use cases come to light with everybody being home right now with COVID-19. So why is this great for education and training? So the Youth Innovation Lab is really all about bringing this technology to youth and trying to get you excited about this industry and where it's going in the future. So what it does is VR is able to democratize experiences. You can see somebody being interviewed there on the top right corner of the screen. That's a situation that, there's only going to be 2 or 3 people at that table. But if we can now take that experience and broadcast that to thousands or maybe even millions of people, that's going to bring that experience to a lot more people. It also provides unparalleled perspective. You see somebody walking around a heart right there. So we can actually go inside of molecules. We can go inside of the heart, inside of cells, see what disease looks like. We can go to space, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So some really interesting tools that provide an unparalleled perspective. And it's going to really change the way we learn. So experiential learning is basically just says that learning through experience is the best way to learn. So you combine that with VR's ability to simulate different experiences, and you have this as the ultimate learning tool. And here's a great quote: I hear, I know, I see, I remember, I do, and I understand. All right. And here's a few of the things that we use VR for, just beyond entertainment. So that's the entertainment is kind of the first thing that we do. We do a lot of work with K through 12 in STEM education. Think of the Magic School Bus, if you've seen that. So VR basically allows you to do that. And then we do some corporate training as well, known as cultural and emotional intelligence. So we'll focus here right now on the top left corner in the K-12 education. And here's another quote we like: you can divide the world into two groups of people, those who think VR is a huge part of the future and those who haven't tried it yet. All right, so with that, I'll get into a couple of things that I want to highlight here. And that's going to be the way that we use VR to show off space and really experience space content when they're using either VR or AR. And I'll maybe ask Meg and Guer to pop in a little bit and tell a little bit about what they've done in the space area. But one of the things I wanted to show is a video of a VR experience that we use a lot at REM5 called Apollo 11. So Apollo 11 is the first mission that landed people on the moon. And so it's a really awesome experience, but there's only, 2 people that were able to walk on the moon in that experience. So that's an experience that we can now bring to people, actually put them in that simulation on the moon. So I'll share this little video here and kind of walk through what that looks like. So I don't think I'll have any sound here, but I'll kind of walk through the experience. What you can see here is the person in the bottom left is actually in virtual reality. And this video is actually what they're seeing. So it's that you're actually following the moon lander and going through what that experience looked like as they were coming towards the moon, and how you can see here how the lander rotates and kind of gets ready for landing here. And in this experience, you can actually control the lander and actually try to land this device yourself. I've never actually completed that, Meg or Guer. I don't know if you've actually been able to land this. I always crash and burn.
It's really hard.
It's really hard to land it. So it sort of shows you the skill that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had there. So this is still inside the lander, and what this person is doing is just looking at the other virtual person that's inside the lander with you, and actually looking out at space before they get off and start walking in space, or start walking on the surface of the moon. So I'll fast forward a little bit here, and what this is just a view of Neil Armstrong actually taking the first steps on the moon. So they've actually recreated that experience in a virtual environment, and you can actually go and see that, see what it looks like for him to take this step off of the moon lander. And then in this experience, right after this, you can actually kind of move around and explore the surface of the moon a little bit. So that's a really interesting thing to do, to get a little bit of perspective of, how deep are these craters? What does the surface look like when they were on the moon there for a little while? And what is the scale of the moon lander look like? That's another thing that VR is really great at, is showing the scale of something you maybe seen pictures of, but when you're standing next to it and seeing it, it just gives you a completely different appreciation for what it is. And this experience actually goes all the way through all the way through the entire Apollo 11 mission. So you go all the way back to Earth as well. So very cool experience. You can see they're kind of how they hop along on the moon. You can see what that looks like as if you were there. So that's one of the really great virtual reality experiences. And I know that, you know, Meg leads the space area of our content, but there's a bunch of experiences that have to do with experience in the solar system, seeing the scale of the solar system. In one, you can actually kind of smash planets together and see what it would look like if planets exploded. So I don't know if there's on the VR side that you wanted to highlight, Meg, before I jump into another demo in AR.
Yeah, well, one other really cool experience that you can do in VR is the journey into the black hole. Is another really neat one. Yeah, and then just the opportunity to go into the actual solar system in VR and see all the planets to their actual scale is totally unparalleled.
Yeah, and just highlights that unparalleled perspective piece of that VR is able to do. And what's cool with some of these too is we're able to do them not only with full virtual reality hardware, but actually with 360 devices too, like the Oculus Go. So when we did our Innovation Lab Plus, which we still have available, you know, for people that are looking to dive in a little bit more and do a little bit more of those learning experiences. Actually, Apollo 11 is one of the experiences that we do with that, and you can do that with the Oculus Go. And actually just sit in a chair in your home, and all that technology is contained right there on your headset. So really great to be able to bring that to people too.
Yeah, and one of my favorite experiences is actually on the Oculus Go. The one Meg mentioned, including the journey into the black hole. What was it, Space-Time? It has a bunch of different visualizations of different phenomena that happen in space, the way light bends, the way space bends around a black hole, and getting to be inside of those phenomena and actually see them around you really, really helps with understanding them, because otherwise you're just looking at weird 2D diagrams and like, what does ultraviolet light look like? And like being able to be inside of that really provided a perspective that I didn't have before.
Yeah, and that's another one that we've highlighted with Innovation Lab Plus, because that is such great content. And you're right, the black hole one is one that not only gives you perspective on how light bends. If what you actually do in that was you have a little it's kind of like a laser shooter is your controller, and then light will bend depending on how big of a mass object you have. So if you have the Earth, you know, shoot a ray of light and it basically goes straight. It isn't really affected all that much. You have something like the sun and it will bend a little bit, but if you have like a black hole, Meg was talking about, the light will just go right down into the black hole. So it's actually like makes it kind of a fun game too to play when you're learning about space. And that program does a really great job of making a lot of these like really fun experiences. All right, cool. Well, I will move on to the next part, which is a demo of a piece of content that I think is really great to show what we can do with AR. Make sure this, let me know if my screen isn't showing up right here. So the one I want to highlight today is called a JFK Moonshot. All right, so that's right there at the top. And what this is going to do is give some background on the Apollo 11 mission. You can see some of the video shot there. But you can actually do this in AR. So remember, augmented reality is now taking the real life and we're putting a digital image on top of it. So what I'm going to do here is click on launch. And so what my phone is trying to do here is look for a space where it can set these augmented reality images. So what I've done is I've put some pieces of tape on this table, and that gives the phone really something to reference. So it knows where the where the table is, where these lines start and stop, and it can say, okay, I recognize this line and I recognize that it's this far from this spot right here. So that's the reason that I've done that. If you have a surface that's really shiny, maybe a granite countertop or a stainless steel surface, sometimes it's not able to see where something begins and ends, and it kind of gets confused about where you are as you're moving your phone around. And so I'll show you why that's important as we get going here. But you can see what it's asking me to do is size this image here. So I'll make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to double tap to place this. I'm going to place it a little further away from me. And what we have here is the rocket that's actually ready to launch there. So I'll stand up here and you can see you can actually walk all the way around this device here. And now if and there's some pieces here we can interact with. So this gives you some videos of Kennedy when he was addressing Congress, speech at Rice University. This is where he said we're going to go to the moon within 10 years. So some really cool interactions here. And then if we tap down here at the bottom to say launch the rocket, we'll actually go through the countdown. It's about a 15-second countdown, and you can see what happens to the arms of the tower here. These fall away as the rocket starts to launch. And you can actually follow this rocket as it goes up and into space. So a really great way to visualize what this launch pad looked like, what the rocket looked like as it was launching. And then we can track the rocket's journey. So this is one I thought was really cool. So now what I want you to do is turn the phone to the side. Try to make this a little smaller again. And now what this is doing is it's showing us actually the path of the rocket as it takes off from Earth. So on the bottom here, I have a slider. And what I can do is slide this and it'll show what's going on with this rocket. So I'll get a little closer and you can see the rocket there looks pretty similar. I think it's dropped one of its engines, but it looks similar to what it did a little when it took off. And then you can see here, and there's these little interactions that we can look at too. Photo of Buzz Aldrin, Collins. Then you can see here it drops this last engine and then starts to make its way to the moon. We got the moon right over here. So now this is where it's important to have this these reference points so that the system knows where you are. Because as I start going through this, I'm getting further and further away from where I started, but it still knows where I am. So they actually went around the moon for about a day before the lander was launched. Which is kind of crazy to think about. And you can see there it's showing how high they are above the moon. And we've got more interactions here. Photographs of the actual moon landing and descent down to the surface of the moon. All right, and then we can click here, and now we can go to the surface of the moon and actually watch the lander come and land on the surface of the moon. So again, this is just another perspective of this event happening. So this is something that we saw a little bit of with Apollo 11 in VR or 360 video. So this is an AR depiction of that. So this is something that's maybe even a little bit more accessible because you can download it right on this app on your phone. And it'll go down and land all the way on the moon there. All right, and this is kind of the last thing in this experience. So just a really interesting depiction of the Apollo 11 mission and what it was like to see that see the launch of the shuttle all the way to landing on the surface of the moon. Another one that I wanted to highlight today is this one in the top left. So this is called Spacecraft AR. And so this one's really interesting because, you know, we've been launching spacecraft into space for decades now. But sometimes we kind of lose track of them, you know, don't really know what's going on with them. So what this has done is you can track all kinds of different devices that have been satellites that have been launched around Earth, to Mars, to different planets, and then out into the solar system as well. So I wanted to highlight one of the ones on Mars here. So Curiosity, one of the first ones here. So again, I've got a nice surface here for doing AR. So I'm going to just select to set this device down right here. And you can actually see what this looks like. And I can move it around with my fingers. So I can pinch and make this a little bit smaller. So you can see this, the Curiosity rover is now sitting right in front of me. You can see how it moves around and interacts when it moves around on Mars. You can take a picture. And you can even share this with somebody. You can see the descent stage on this one here. I think it's a little bit smaller, but just a bunch of different, a bunch of different spacecraft and satellites that you can explore and actually look at in a completely different way. So this is something where you might be able to find a 2D image online and be able to see these kind of spacecraft that way. But AR really allows you to have a completely different perspective. You can walk around a table and see, here's the International Space Station. So this is one we do. There's a lot of great VR and AR content about the International Space Station, but you can actually pull this up on your phone and see what this looks like. This huge, huge space station. That's pretty cool to see that. Yeah, so that's so those are a couple of, oh, I got one more I wanted to show you before we stop the demos here. So this is a fun one, just called NASA Selfies. So we like to share this one when we're doing Innovation Lab Plus. You just take a quick picture and you can see yourself in space. There's all kinds of different backgrounds you can pick here. So we can look at a dead star or the Crab Nebula. Change your background, and you can click on this to learn a little bit more about it, or save the image as well. So there you go. I'm going to share that right now. So that's another really cool one. Just a little bit more fun and games there. But so those three applications are called the JFK Moonshot, Spacecraft AR, and then NASA Selfies. So a few different ways you can explore space with augmented reality. Yeah, Megan Guerra, do you want to add anything about some of the other space content that we've looked at, and then some of the offerings that we've got? I think you know, Meg, you did a whole space camp that was pretty cool. Spent what, 3 or 4 hours, I think, exploring some of the space content. So not only doing the Apollo 11 mission, but diving into some of these more advanced applications as well.
Yeah, so there's also Mission International Space Station, which is an app where you can go on the actual space station and explore it and see all of the different tools that they use in space. You can even go in and they actually have like a VR headset on the International Space Station, which is pretty cool. They actually use it, the tool. So you can tour all over the space station. And another cool part of this one is you can also watch these videos of actual astronauts on the space station, like showing you how they do their day-to-day life and the things that they do. One that I thought was really neat is like they show you how they wash their hair in an anti-gravity zone. Is really neat.
And they've done a lot of 360 video capture on the International Space Station. So I think they're really seeing the value of this as a unique capture tool. So instead of just taking 2D pictures when they're up there, they're able to take 360 images and actually show what it's like to be inside the space station and get a little bit more of a personal view and that unique perspective. So that's really awesome that NASA is really involved in both VR, AR, and kind of this whole XR area, because they're able to show off what they're doing in a much better way than you could with some other mediums.
Yeah, there are some other really interesting 360 videos too, where you are attached to a weather balloon, and you start on the ground of Earth, and then you just go up and up attached to this weather balloon, and you get to see a solar eclipse in space, like from that perspective. And that's another one that's just a 360 video on the standalone Oculus Go headset, so it's really accessible. And really another unparalleled perspective.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, those are the demos that we've got for today and the topics that we wanted to cover. So if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to chat about anything with all of you, even if it's Square has any comments or questions. Otherwise, we'll sign off for this week. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you have any questions about these, feel free to contact us, contact@rem5vr.com. And like I said, some of these pieces of content are things that we've done with Youth Innovation Lab Plus. So really dive into those and got the whole lesson plans around them, including some of these AR applications. That's where we're using some of these AR applications as a way to augment the VR experiences as well. So really additive to what we're doing with VR and 360 videos. So really, if you want to dive more deeply into that, we're doing something with space basically every week, because there's so much really great space content out there and so many different things to explore. So, all right, well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you next week at the same time. Thank you.
Bye.